Coming up on the Musashi X Chronicles.
We are now halfway through this Sonic the Hedgehog marathon, and I'm about to review what I consider to be the best 2D classic Sonic game ever made. What I have here in my hands are Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a really good game in its own right, selling more than 6 million copies worldwide. And if you bundle that together with the Sega Genesis, the sales figures soar to even greater heights than that. Now, Sonic CD is a good game all its own, but it didn't exactly sell that well, if only because the Sega CD didn't exactly sell that well, for about 2 million units worldwide. Nowhere near as high as that of the Genesis itself, so Sega need to redeem themselves for that. Both of these games came out in 1994, with Sonic 3 coming out on February 2nd, Groundhog Day, which is also my birthday, by the way. And Sonic & Knuckles came out October, 8 months after Sonic 3. Now, why the 8-month time frame? Well, right after the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Sonic CD, Sega actually started development on both of these games together and was meant to be one whole game. However, what held them back are not only time constraints but also the cost of cartridge, so they had to separate these two games as separate projects. Now, Sonic & Knuckles has a slot inside it, and this is when you insert Sonic 3 in it, to make it one whole game like this. And this is the result of what would be now known as Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So one would have to wonder, how will Sega top what the first 3 games did? Well, you can chalk that one up to the whimsical yet wonderful creative mind of one Yuji Naka.
Yeah, I never really get to talk about him at first. This is Yuji Naka, best known to the gaming world as the creator of Sonic, as well as a former lead programmer for Sonic Team, until he left, in good terms that is, to start his own company. During his teenage years, he would learn how to program by replicating and debugging video game code printed in magazines. This experience prompted him to study assemblers and practice writing code during his years of high school. However, after graduating from high school, Naka decided not to go to college and remain in his hometown of Osaka to continue learning computer coding on his own. His programming debut happened in 1983 when Sega was hiring programming assistants, and Naka actually signed up for it. And the first game he programmed was Girls Garden, an action game and a very early dating sim game made for the SG-1000, Sega's very first console way prior to the Master System. The higher-ups were very impressed with his work that not only they would publish the game, but also has Naka become a programmer in other games, such as the first 2 games in the Phantasy Star series, a heavily underrated RPG series that need more love and attention, and the Sega Genesis port of the arcade classic Ghouls 'n Ghosts. His breakthrough came in 1991 with the very first Sonic the Hedgehog, and the rest is history. He even briefly worked in the US branch of Sega called Sega Technical Institute with another famed programmer, Mark Cerny, a major player in the development of the current generation of Sony PlayStation consoles. Naka is indeed one of the legendary programmers in the industry that even conventions like South by Southwest in Austin invited him as a guest. Here's a photo of myself with Naka from last year's South by Southwest event. Shout out to my friend Lewis for telling me all about him. He's a very nice person to talk to, and not only did I have the honor of meeting him, but I was also very happy that right off the bat, he recognized my cosplay of Beat from Jet Set Radio Future. Great times I had that year.
Now if you're playing Sonic the Hedgehog 3 by itself, you'll notice that there's only just 6 zones in the entire game, way shorter than the last games. However, if you enter the stage select cheat code, you'll notice that there's more zones than what you see on Sonic 3 by itself. In fact, the other zones right after launch base, they're only playable via Sonic and Knuckles by itself. However, you can play through every single stage, beginning with Angel Island all the way to the very end of Sonic and Knuckles, if you connect both of them together like this, creating Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Even though I'm going to review this game as one whole title, I'll also dig into some facts of what can happen if you're playing each of these games separate. This might be my longest classic Sonic game review yet. So, grab some snacks, sit back, and enjoy the show. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is a go-go, folks.
After Sonic the Hedgehog 2 ended, the Death Egg crash landed on a mysterious floating island known as Angel Island. While Eggman begins to repair the damaged station, he meets Knuckles the Echidna, the last surviving member of an ancient Echidna civilization that once inhabited the island, as well as the guardian of the Master Emerald, which grants the island its levitating powers. Realizing that Sonic and Tails will try to track him down, Eggman was able to trick Knuckles into believing that Sonic is trying to steal the Master Emerald from the island, turning the two against each other while Eggman tries to repair his space station. Meanwhile, Sonic and Tails approach Angel Island in their biplane, the Tornado. Sonic jumps off and, using the power of the Chaos Emeralds, turns to Supersonic and zooms towards the island to investigate. When they arrive, Knuckles ambushes Sonic from underground, steals the emeralds, and disappears inland. As Sonic and Tails travel through the island, they frequently encounter Knuckles and Eggman, who hinder their progress with various traps, and Sonic and Tails will do whatever they can to stop Dr. Eggman, while also persuading Knuckles to stop attacking them, as he's being tricked otherwise. When playing Sonic 3 standalone, you get to play as Sonic or Tails, and you do have a save feature, making continues pointless. Sonic and Knuckles standalone, by contrast, doesn't have a save feature, nor do you have the option to play as Tails, unless you lock both games together. And the Knuckles storyline is right after Sonic and Tails, but we'll get to that real soon. Sonic plays as he was in the first 3 games, only this time he doesn't have the super peel out from Sonic CD. Instead, he has an ability called Insta-Shield, though back in the day I used to call it the Sonic Slash. It's executed by pressing the jump button in mid-air, allowing for an extra attack range, but only when you don't have a barrier around him. It's a nice technique to use against anything, especially Eggman matches. Tails can finally fly manually by mashing the jump button in mid-air, but can tire out gradually, but still a nice addition. Unlike Sonic, Tails can actually swim underwater, and when player 2 controls Tails, Sonic can hold onto Tails and take you to areas that Sonic himself can't reach. Knuckles is considered the hard mode as his jump height is lower than Sonic and Tails, but has the ability to glide, can climb up walls with his fists, and break certain walls without the need to actually spin dash. Because of this, his stages have more dangerous layouts that can make some people rage quit. Aside from the familiar item boxes, new to the game are 3 different elemental barriers, each protecting you against a corresponding element. Flame protects you from fire and allows you to step in lava. Bubble prevents drowning. And Magnetic protects you from electricity and can attract nearby rings. You can also perform a barrier's active abilities if you're playing as Sonic. Flame can give you the fire dash, Bubble can make you bounce, and Magnetic can give you the double jump. Tails and Knuckles can't perform any of these moves, but the barrier's passive abilities still stand. Just be careful on where you'll be using a barrier, as you don't always lose them through enemy contact. In this example, you can lose a flame or magnetic barrier just by diving in the water. Also beware of these Eggman boxes, because destroying them can cause damage to you, and if you have no rings at all, destroying one can equal death. When you collect a certain number of rings and pass a checkpoint, stars will appear for you to enter to gain more rings or score barriers, and they differ depending on the color the stars appear. Orange stars is the slot machine from Sonic 2, with a rotating background throwback from Sonic 1. Red stars let you play the Electric Spheres game, all while avoiding a pursuing Helix. And the white stars is the Gumball machine. Without a doubt, the graphics are more detailed than the first two games, and the stage designs not only are huge, but the obstacle placements have more rhyme and reason than the near-constant cluttering in Sonic CD. Speaking of stages, each zone has 2 acts, only this time, new to the game are mid-bosses at the end of Act 1. They're not really that difficult, as Sonic and Tails anyway, but it's great to have some extra meat in the game. And because the levels are huge, Act 2 immediately starts instead of fading to black like the past games, and you get to keep whatever barrier you got at the end of the act. In addition, Act 2 has a different variation of the Act 1 music, but sound just as good. In fact, the whole soundtrack is actually the best I've ever heard. Especially the Sonic 3 stages, when the developers got some assistance from the late king of pop himself, Michael Jackson. Yep, Michael Jackson and Sega sure were big back in the day. Especially with the Moonwalker arcade and Genesis games, as well as his appearance and voice work in Space Channel 5 Part 2. All 3 characters go the same stages, with some exceptions and stage layout differences. You start off in Angel Island Zone, this game's Green Hill, only more rainforest-like, and very pristine in the graphics, until you reach your first mid-boss encounter, where things start to
burn to the ground! Burn to the ground! Burn to the ground! Burn! Burn to the ground! Burn! Burn to the ground!
Yeah, that footage that you hear and saw is actually from a black sheep of a well-established game series. And don't worry folks, I promise you all that I will get to review that very stupid game in a future marathon soon.
Next is Hydro City, the water level, which is actually very fun, sporting 2 of my favorite tracks, and so many slides that you can actually go fast in this zone. Just don't get caught by the ring-sucking piranhas. Stage 3 is Marble Garden. It's nothing like Marble Zone in Sonic 1, as you can go really fast in downhill slopes, and you can ride spinning tops that make you really go fast when you touch the ground. It's also worth noting that there's instant death mud that you must jump out fast, similar to Oil Ocean. And there are certain walls that can only break if you're riding a spinning top. Also in this zone is where the boss matches differ depending on the story route. Stage 4 is Carnival Night. It's just what it sounds like, an amusement park filled with bumpers and balloons to fit the theme. It also has the infamous Barrel of Doom, where you have to move the D-pad up and down until you get a clear path to pass through. I nearly went the 10-minute mark because of this area. Stage 5 is Ice Cap. If you're playing the game as Sonic, you start off with a really cool snowboarding sequence. It's also another stage with a very memorable track, and it also has ice geysers that can freeze you and take damage unless you have another player to save you from freeze damage, as you can't break free at your own will at all like you could in Sonic CD. Stage 6 is Launch Base. Eggman's base of operations before launching the Death Egg once more, and is the final stage if you're playing Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone. It's not really that hard to traverse through, but I wouldn't recommend speeding too much, as certain crushers like this can be fast enough to kill you when you least expect it. Stage 7 is Mushroom Hill, another Green Hill-like zone, and is the first stage in Sonic & Knuckles standalone. It's filled with mushrooms that bounce you up, and there's an abundance of secret areas if you know where to look. If you have both games locked on, you'll be taken to an area where the Master Emerald is introduced, a giant emerald with enormous power source that's used to get the island floating. I should also mention that when you play the games locked on together, the Act 1 boss for Sonic & Knuckles, while a good track in its own right, replaces the Act 1 boss music from Sonic 3. Stage 8 is Flying Battery. Think of it as a fusion of Metropolis and Wing Fortress zones from Sonic 2, that while you don't encounter that much bottomless pits, your biggest threats are fake capsules containing enemies and getting crushed. A lot. It also has the ceiling laser throwback from Sonic 2. You can hit it as much as you like, but your only way of defeating it at all is just simply avoiding it. Stage 9 is Sandopolis. I personally hate this stage with a passion, not only for getting crushed by many things, but the stage can go on almost forever that it's very labyrinthine, especially Act 2 with these stupid ghosts that you need to shine the light before the playing field gradually becomes dark, slowly making them feral, especially in the Knuckles route when they become near deadly when you start the act. Stage 9 is Lava Reef. It's what it sounds like. There's deadly lava unless you have the flame barrier on your person, but you also have to avoid smog machines that slowly drain your rings if it smokes you, similarly to when you get caught by the piranhas in Hydro City. It's also the only zone in which Act 2, as Sonic and Tails, has you dodging Eggman missiles while the match auto-scrolls itself until it becomes safe again to traverse through. You don't attack Eggman directly. Instead, let his bombs do the work for you. Oh, and the tracks on both acts are actually really awesome as well. Stage 11 is Hidden Palace. Knuckles is your only threat in this stage, but even then, especially with the insta-shield from Sonic, he's rather easy to defeat. After defeating Knuckles, Eggman takes the Master Emerald and escapes with it. You can hit him all you like, but Eggman still succeeds in escaping. Knuckles was then convinced that Eggman is the true enemy and decided to assist the heroes, leading them to the next zone. Stage 12 is Sky Sanctuary. Kinda like Flying Battery, only somewhat less threatening. But there are some floating platforms that can actually crush you to death like this. It also introduces a new Eggman invention named Mecha Sonic, a successor to Metal Sonic after the latter was incapacitated during his defeat in Sonic CD, and it's a 3-part boss match, beginning with the Wrecking Ball machine from Sonic 1, which moves somewhat stiff in comparison, the fake form generator from Sonic 2, and finally just Mecha Sonic by himself. After defeating Mecha Sonic, Sonic and Tails make a mad dash to the top while the floating platform crumbles beneath them, and stow away in time aboard the Death Egg just as it takes off. Knuckles' vital zone is the ruins of Sky Sanctuary, where you fight 2 rounds against Mecha Sonic. Round 1 is how he was when fighting against Sonic and Tails, but round 2 is when he starts using the Master Emerald to turn hyper, making himself invincible for a short while. Your cue is when he reverts back to normal right after firing 4 shots at you and before he recharges fully with the Master Emerald. Stage 13 is Death Egg. Now a fully fledged stage with the inside of Act 1 closely resemble the actual Death Star from Star Wars, sporting weird loops, obstacles with electricity, which even the magnetic barrier doesn't save you from it, and an anti-gravity gimmick. This zone is exclusive to Sonic and Tails, but Knuckles can also play this stage by way of the stage select code. However, if you actually defeat the zone as Knuckles, you'll be booted back to the title screen regardless. The final stage is Doomsday, and it's the final match against Dr. Eggman, exclusive only to Sonic if you have all of the 7 Chaos Emeralds if you play Sonic and Knuckles standalone, or get even stronger emeralds if both games are locked on together, which I will also get to soon. The first part has you luring Eggman's homing missiles at its face. When it's just down to his mobile suit, the only thing left for you to do is just simply ram into it. Yep, pretty simple. Just be sure your ring count doesn't go 0. Since you lost all the Chaos Emeralds from the start of the game, it's up to you to retrieve them back, and unlike the past 3 games, you instead need to find hidden areas where it has a giant ring for you to enter. The special stages have a simple objective. Just collect the blue spheres and avoid the red ones, because touching the red ones will force you out of the special stage. In fact, touching the blue spheres at all will actually make them red, so be cautious about it. You can, however, turn some of those spheres into rings when you encircle a grid of blue spheres like this. Getting 50 rings in a special stage will grant you an extra continue, and if you manage to get all the rings in a special stage, you'll be rewarded with a perfect with 50,000 more points, especially in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. You also gain an extra life for every 50,000 points. Once you clear all the blue spheres, the Chaos Emerald is yours, and when you have all 7 of them once again, you can turn Supersonic at 50 rings or more. Knuckles can also turn Super as well, with much faster running, climbing, and gliding. In Sonic 2, just by simply jumping, you become Supersonic against your will. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, you just need to press jump in midair again for it to activate, assuming if Sonic has no barrier around him. Though oddly enough, Knuckles can actually activate his super form even with a barrier. By linking both games together, Knuckles can also be playable in the Sonic 3 levels with different routes that Sonic and Tails can't enter themselves. However, Knuckles fights a few of the same bosses, now with different attack patterns, such as the Angel Island Act 1 boss, now firing missiles than just using the flamethrower. And also has a new opponent in the form of Egg Robo, one of Eggman's robots who emerges out of the Death Egg wreckage and becomes sentient, but carries out Eggman's will to get the Master Emerald. There are some aesthetical differences that help indicate that Knuckles' story is right after Sonic and Tails. For instance, Angel Island is no longer grounded, which is why you don't see that much water. You don't see any water at all in Carnival Night Zone, and you no longer see the Death Egg in Launch Base as it's already been destroyed. Another difference is that in Marble Garden Act 2, Sonic and Tails' match with Dr. Eggman takes to the skies, while Knuckles' match with Egg Robo is grounded. Also in Carnival Night Act 2, he doesn't have a boss match at all. Well, not technically unless you are able to trigger a glitch, but I wouldn't advise doing so, mainly because you can get killed due to the low jumping height. There are also some graphical errors when you lock both games together, though this also happens if you play Sonic and Knuckles standalone. This cutscene for Knuckles happens in Mushroom Hill, but you start in Angel Island Zone, almost as if it took a huge detour. Another noticeable error is the Flying Battery Act 2 boss match. Instead of Egg Robo, you instead see Dr. Eggman in the cockpit. When you lock on both games together, the save feature makes a return, and Tails is accessible for his full story. I've mentioned that there are stronger emeralds than the Chaos Emeralds themselves in this game. That's because in this fused together game, we're also introduced to Super Emeralds. This happens when you immediately enter Mushroom Hill and enter a giant multicolored ring. From there, the Chaos Emeralds that you collected in the Sonic 3 stages will temporarily be sacrificed and will become giant colorless versions of themselves, and you have to get their powers back by stepping into one and play the special stages again, only this time with its layout from Sonic & Knuckles standalone.
Now if you know where to look for the giant multicolored rings, you could actually get all 7 of the Super Emeralds as early as Mushroom Hill Act 2. And should you get all 7 of them, a much greater reward is given to each character in the game. And it's definitely well worth the effort.
Hypersonic has twice the speed than Supersonic, cannot drown at all, and can execute a Hyper Dash which not only serves as a double jump, but the resulting flash can destroy any enemy on screen. Hyper Knuckles has an increase in stats more so than his super form, and a slight increase in jump height when you pick up speed. He also has a hidden technique that whenever you collide with a wall upon gaining enough gliding distance, the resulting screen shake will destroy any enemy on screen. Sadly, he can still drown. Tails cannot turn super with the Chaos Emeralds alone, but he can do so with the Super Emeralds. And in my opinion, I think he's more broken than Hyper, Sonic, or Knuckles. mainly because the super flickies that are on his side can home in on any enemy, even on matches against Dr. Eggman or Mecha Sonic. However, just like Super or Hyper Knuckles, Super Tails cannot breathe underwater. Just keep in mind that these forms still won't save you from bottomless pits or getting crushed, no matter which character you're playing.
What else can I say about Sonic 3 and Knuckles that hasn't already been said? I consider this to be my #1 overall Sonic game to play, with Sonic Heroes being number 2. This game has the best levels in the game, great graphics, very rich in detail, really good power-ups and abilities to use, all the things you can unlock, best soundtrack on a Sonic game. Sure, Sonic 2 sounds awesome, but Sonic 3 and Knuckles topped it much better. Also, each character brings something interesting to explore around the stages however you like, while also keeping that same core gameplay intact. That is how you make a great sequel, folks. However, there is more to this Sonic and Knuckles cartridge than just playing Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
If you lock on Sonic the Hedgehog 2 to the slot, you'll get to play as Knuckles in Sonic 2. Not much has changed other than Knuckles being the only character to play. He can still collect Chaos Emeralds to turn Super. And unlike Sonic and Tails, Knuckles still retains the number of rings collected whenever he exits the special stage. However, in the final match with Dr. Eggman, especially due to Knuckles' low jump height, you now have to wait until he dips down enough for you to jump on him. If you lock on any other game, even Sonic 1, you'll get a screen that says "No way," indicating that it's not compatible with the cartridge. However, if you press A, B, and C together, you can play millions upon millions of the Sonic 3 and Knuckles special stages with different layouts. Assuming if you have nothing else to do with your life.
Instead of playing these games separately, you owe it to yourself to actually try to track these games down and play them as one whole game the way it's meant to be. You can actually find this in a virtual console to download, or you can also find them in compilations like, say, the Sonic Mega Collection Plus on the PS2, or Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn. However, I do find it odd that in the Sonic Ultimate Genesis Collection for the PS3 and 360, both of these games are available as separate titles, and there's not a single lock-on title at all in this compilation. The reason for that is because the developers said that they're citing tight development times. Honestly, I find that to be a dumb reason. I mean, if you could fit that in a PS2 DVD media disc or a Sega Saturn CDR media disc, why not Blu-ray? Take for example, Extreme Legends Dynasty Warriors 8 Complete Edition on the PS4. Really sweet game, by the way. A typical Blu-ray disc holds about 25 gigs of data, twice as more if you're doing it dual layered, versus a 16 megabyte game. We live in the year 2017, and technology has evolved to the point where porting 90s games should be easy now in this generation. So, in my own opinion, they really have no legitimate excuse. Now, the reason why I played the Sonic Ultimate Genesis Collection at all is because of that one very pathetically easy Platinum trophy that I could actually get for my PlayStation Network account. Hands down the best classic 2D Sonic game ever made. It definitely warrants a perfect 10 on this review. I would have to be a complete idiot otherwise to not give it a perfect score. Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 may have paved the way to what we would know as a really huge franchise, and while Sonic CD is ambitious in its own way, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, oh, you'll have very high replay value with this one with all the things you want to unlock. Well, that wraps up this review, and there's only 2 games left on Sonic Marathon Volume 1. However, they're not exactly the kind of games that I would come back to frequently. So next up on Sonic Marathon Volume 1, we're going to take a look at Sonic Spinball for the Genesis. Until then, this has been Musashi X. I bid you all farewell, take care, and stay tuned.